Live.
Hey, folks, this episode of The Majority Report is brought to you by one of our favorite sponsors, Sunset Lake Sabadell.com. Sunset Lake Sabadell.com is giving you a 20% discount with the coupon code Left is Best. One word. Check it out, folks. Great Sabadell products. They have tinctures with melatonin for your sleeping. I use the straight tincture for my sleeping. It has been a huge boon, not just to my sleep, but my ability to get off of Ambien, which is not a great thing to take for a prolonged period of time, I've been told. Also, they have gummy bears. They have fudge. They have coffee. These make great gifts, incidentally. And smokables that Matt came around, was a Sabadell skeptic, and now puts a bunch of stuff in his grinder and mixes it all up, some of that keef and whatnot. And they're also a movement partner. They have been really helpful in terms of like funding the Worcester nurses strike and helping us out with our fundraising on Afghan refugees. We got something else planned. I'm not gonna say what it is, but very soon, actually. And they came to us with that idea. Well, we'll talk about that when that happens. But a great company, and also they have great farming practices, integrated pest management. They don't use any pesticides. Obviously, hugely important after what the conversation we had earlier this week. About the havoc being wreaked by pesticides in this country. They practice regenerative farming, so they take care of the soil. They use organic fertilizer. Just an all-around great company. Sunset Lake Sabadell.com. Left is Best gets you 20% off. Honestly, great gifts. If my kids were a little bit older, they'd be getting some of that for their Hanukkah gifts, but I'm not gonna. But there are other folks who are going to get some fudge from me. All right. Now for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, November 12th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Heather Parton, or as you may know her, Digby, from the Uber blog Hullaballoo and the site Salon.com. Also joining us later in the program, David Roth, host of the Distraction podcast and a founder of Defector Media. He'll be here to discuss with us the sports program at the University of Austin. Meanwhile, appeals court temporarily blocks the National Archives from handing over Trump's docs to the January 6th committee. Speaking of said committee, they've issued a subpoena deadline for today for former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to meet with that committee after his request for executive privilege denied by the present White House. But meanwhile, where the hell has Merrick Garland gone to? And as Joe Manchin preens, congressional Democrats want Biden to get more aggressive. All the while, inflation talk has now become the new deficit hysteria. In the west and north of this country, COVID begins to surge again as Europe sees a even bigger surge. Half the deaths in the world the past week came from Europe in terms of COVID. COP26 backs off its call to end use of coal as calls mount for climate reparations. The Rittenhouse trial begins to wrap in Kenosha, and Belarus threatens to throttle EU gas supply in border disputes with refugees stuck suffering in the middle. And lastly, the New Jersey governor race finally over. Schittarelli has conceded. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Casual Friday. As you can see, I am wearing a soft-collared shirt. What I really need to do, Emma Vigland, is to get a long-sleeve soft-collared shirt.
Yes, the long-sleeve polo, very fashionable.
Is that right?
I don't know.
Some people have commented that you're doing a bit of a Steve Bannon two-shirt thing, so just keep an eye on that.
This is actually a throwback. This used to be my this is my '90s grunge wear.
Your new concert.
Yeah.
Yep. This is.
I mean, you're committing a cardinal fashion sin. You understand that, right?
The blue on blue.
Oh, I thought that was black on blue.
No.
Oh, well, then you're in the clear.
They're two different shades of blue. I should say that they are two different at two different I guess moments of fading of the blue, I should say.
Okay. Right.
That's the way that works.
One is a bit more disintegrated than the other.
That's right.
Well, one's closer to the end.
Exactly.
I can't tell which one, but
that is exactly the case.
Okay.
So here we are. It is Friday, and looking back on the week, and we're going to talk about what's happening with the with the January 6th stuff with Heather, and we may also talk about the Rittenhouse. We're moving into an era where we're going to have a bunch of smaller stories within the context of politics. We are waiting, obviously, for the pretense of the CBO scores to come to fruition. We'll talk more about that with Heather in terms of the reconciliation bill. But I'm starting to get the sense, and we'll talk to Heather about this too, that it really is going to come down to Manchin. And it's really going to come down to what is Joe Biden willing to do in terms of leaning on Joe Manchin. And I think it should just be, we're going to investigate your daughter. But,
yeah, I mean, let's start using sticks and not carrots.
We need less FDR talk and more LBJ talk.
Yeah,
exactly.
A little bit of arm twisting, some Indian burns. Is that a PC term at this point?
No, don't say that.
Okay,
no,
sorry.
You don't say that.
I'm sorry.
Arm twisting is good.
Arm twisting. Sorry.
All right, let's take a look at this. We had mentioned this, I think, a couple of days ago, and apparently now there is audio and video of this. There are, I think, 3 Starbucks franchises in Buffalo that are attempting to unionize, and in and around Buffalo. And this is obviously a terror for management in terms of the idea that, like, wait a second, could this happen all around the country? So Howard Schultz flew in. You'll recall Howard Schultz is the one who came out and sort of dibbled around the idea that I'm going to run for president. And I'm trying to think of what it was, that guy, Bill Burton. It was Bill Burton and Steve Schmidt, who got paid millions of dollars to pretend that this guy could win an election and would not have thrown it to Donald Trump had he stayed in. And they made a ton of cash. And was it Bill Burton who said that, like, we need, what was the saying, Matt? What was it? It was like,
imagine a new possibility or something like that.
We need an imagination of new possibilities or something. It was really impressive. And this is, I mean, I hate to characterize it this way, but Howard Schultz really can't smell his own farts. And I know that's a little juvenile, but when you look at what he's going to be talking about here, it really is amazing, the bubble that someone this wealthy lives in, that they don't even realize what they're saying. And he's probably never even worked in one of his own franchises for more than 10 minutes. But here he is.
1 second.
Bear with us, ladies and gentlemen. He's got a little bit of,
and in Poland were sent to the concentration camps.
Oh, wait, can you go back just a little bit? Pause it for 1
into-
second. Pause it for 1 second. Just go back because we want let's start it here, please.
That when people in Germany and in Poland were sent to the concentration camps, they were thrown into rail cars, and sometimes the journey was 8 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, no light, no water, no food. And when they arrived at the camps, the rail cars were slammed open, and you could hear that metal door just right against the cold weather. Men were separated from women, and women were separated from children.
Pause it.
And one
I just
person
want to make
every
it clear
6.
what this is. It's Schultz basically talking to would-be union workers.
This is a captive audience meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not like some type of I don't know, conference where people share their stories of the Holocaust.
No.
I just want to make this clear. He is building up to why people shouldn't unionize in his shops. They have to be there. And
Well, he can't explicitly say that, essentially, right?
Yeah, and
so he has to make it this
Well,
pablum.
A little bit more context is this was a story told to him by a rabbi in Israel.
Right.
He thought he should share with his workers. So.
Yeah.
right. And he really remembered all the details, I guess, there. Now, just to be clear, he is not about to say it's better to work at Starbucks than it is to be transported by train in Nazi Germany. I just want to make that clear.
Wow.
Continue. Yeah.
Should be implied, but
Men were separated from women, and women were separated from children. And one person for every 6 was given a blanket. One blanket for every 6 people. And the person who got the blanket had to decide what to do with this blanket that I have for myself. And not everyone, but most people shared their blanket with 5 other people. And the rabbi says to me, take your blanket and go share it with 5 other people. And so much of that story is threaded into what we have tried to do at Starbucks, is share our blanket. Second story.
Okay.
The first one didn't make you think I'm completely insane enough. You know what I take from that story? Solidarity.
yeah.
Form a union.
Right.
It kind of, if it was taken, I mean, it's bizarre in many forms, but if it was taken out of context, you would think like, oh, this is about people banding together against a larger evil entity, right? Maybe that could have some pro-union interpretations, but it's a way, I mean, apparently, according to the person who posted this, he never explicitly said that you can't unionize because you can't actually say that. That's illegal.
course.
You do everything other than that. It was a 45-minute speech. He alluded to, he did refer directly to the union, but he tried to convince everybody in the audience that they should be proud of what Starbucks built over the past many decades when it was not unionized. And that's what that anecdote was supposed to convey.
I
don't know, but
Well, like, so the interpretation is like, oh, you can trust certain people with private property like blankets because they'll share it. Like,
right, like I will share my blanket with you, even though I'm worth $5 billion.
Oh, that's what's so offensive about this.
Right.
Because I mean,
big is
look,
this blanket?
Right.
the anecdote itself is the anecdote itself is a nice anecdote. I'm not so sure that it's like as I don't know, as
Not relevant.
as romantic, but the point being is that the idea that this enterprise, this profit-making enterprise that has made him a billionaire, is really set up on the foundation of we are all suffering. We're all suffering, and we need to share. Like, who is the person in his anecdote? Like you say, is Schultz the guy who's sharing his blanket? Is he really sharing his blanket, or is he sharing, like one tiny, tiny, tiny thread from that blanket?
No, he's the one hoarding people's blankets, and when they're sleeping or when they're in the bathroom, stealing them to stitch them together to make an even thicker blanket for himself. He has $5 billion.
He's leaving a couple of threads of the blanket, and then just amassing a much bigger blanket.
Scraps, yeah. We do have this quote, by the way.
And maybe we need a solution to it that risks the imagination of a new kind of possibility.
Oh my God. And the other thing about this that's amazing is that this obviously was not shot by someone on there. This was shot by the company.
Starbucks. Yeah.
Like, they're like, this is going to be great because if there are future attempts to unionize, Howard may not even have to show up and tell this story again. We can just distribute it. Unbelievable.
And I do like the visual of all of them wearing masks as a captive audience while he stands in the center and addresses them all. And like, I'm old enough to remember that there used to be a big talking point that Starbucks was an ethical multi-billion-dollar corporation, and that you can look to them for corporate governance that treats people right. Okay, as they union bust. That's like how naive that nonsense was.
Howard, we want you to wear the cardigan. It just makes you look like you're not a billionaire. I think it's a good one. I think I would go with the cardigan.
Not the cashmere one, the other one.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't have any non-cashmere cardigans.
Just go to Men's Warehouse and pick me out a cardigan. Folks, a couple of sponsors on the program today. This is a scenario I'm sure many people have gone through. You go to see a doctor, you search online, maybe you ask some people, you find one that's good, you wait on hold to book an appointment, you rearrange your schedule because it's always based on their schedule. When you finally go in, you find out the doctor doesn't even take your insurance. Well, how do you avoid that happening time and time again? You can download the free ZocDoc app. It is the easiest way to find a great doctor and instantly book an appointment. With ZocDoc, you search local doctors who take your insurance, you read verified patient reviews, and then you book an appointment. Doesn't matter if it's an in-person or a video appointment. You completely bypass the whole receptionist process. Doesn't matter if you need a primary care physician, if you need a dentist, if you need a dermatologist, psychiatrist, elbow doctor, eye doctor, or any other specialist, ZocDoc has you covered. Go to ZocDoc.com/majority. You download the ZocDoc app, you sign up, and you do so for free. Every month, millions of people use ZocDoc, including Emma, Bradley, right? How did you guys find the ZocDoc experience?
Well, it was super easy. I was looking for a new dentist recently, since I moved to Brooklyn, and I was trying to find somebody close by with good reviews, and I was able to put in my insurance, and bing, bang, boom. It was really,
there you go.
And I was
just going to say bingo, bango.
Bingo, bango, that too.
Look, ZocDoc makes healthcare easy, and now is the time to prioritize your health. Good time to go out. Go get an appointment now. January, February could be a little bit rough. Go to ZocDoc.com/majority. Download the ZocDoc app. Sign up for free and book a top-rated doctor. Many are available as soon as today. That is ZocDoc.com/majority. Also, a new sponsor, and went through some testing of the product first. And it's a wine company. Wine can be good. Wine can be bad. Every once in a while, it can be truly awesome. And we'd like to introduce our new sponsor, the Prisoner Wine Company. So 20 years ago, the Prisoner Wine Company combined some of California's best and most unusual grape varieties to make a bold and complex blend, the Prisoner Red Blend. From the shape and the weight of the bottle to the label featuring Francisco Goya's artwork, every detail is striking and memorable. That artwork is like a sketch that was part of Goya's series entitled The Disasters of War. And it was about the brutality and injustice of the Spanish War of Independence in 1808. The Prisoner Wine Company, they have on their website, they stand in solidarity with the fight against racism, mass incarceration, and the systemic oppression of Black communities. Don't push that too hard, but I had checked them out. Now, the Prisoner Wine Company will ship all of their rule-bending blends, like the Prisoner Red Blend, the Prisoner Chardonnay, and the Thorn Merlot, directly to your door. Now, here's the process. I'm not the most sophisticated of wine drinkers. Everything I know because my sister was worked in that business. And so I had to have her try it out with me. I really actually appreciate it. I like, this is it's got like some Syrah and some Petit Syrah and some Cabernet grapes. We had the Prisoner wine but I had to make sure that Julie liked it, and she did. And it's also just a beautiful bottle and label. Fantastic gift.
I would love to try this. I'm a big wine person, so this is...
I did not know that.
Well, I mean, I have yet to sample it. You're hoarding all the samples.
Well, yeah, that's one of the... Yeah, you're gonna have a little fun.
One of the perks, I guess, but...
Well, maybe, who knows what you'll be getting for the holiday gift.
Ah.
Go to theprisonerwine.com, theprisonerwine.com/majority rep. prisonerwine.com/majority rep for 20% off plus shipping included in your first purchase. You get it in time for the holidays. Makes it a great gift. This is the best deal they have available. Get 20% off plus shipping included at theprisonerwine.com/majority rep. That's theprisonerwine.com/Maj rep. MAJREP. Maj rep. Offer is valid on first-time online orders only for U.S. residents of legal drinking age through 12/31/2021. Other exclusions may apply. Please enjoy the wine responsibly, of course. And lastly, another holiday gift idea. You want to give them something, your friends and family, something more than memorable this holiday, something that will give them and remind them of you every single day. The Hello Tushy Bidet checks all the boxes. It's useful, definitely unique, high-tech, but affordable, and it's eco-friendly. This is something like you could change somebody's life with this, honestly. Hello Tushy Bidet cleans your butt, as you know, with a stream of fresh water. Obviously better than wiping, and it cuts toilet paper use down by 80%. Washes your bum. Just spray and pat dry. You don't need a plumber. Hello Tushy conveniently attaches to your toilet in under 8 minutes. The complete Tushy system turns your restroom into your best room with the Tushy Bidet attachment, Ottoman toilet brush, and Tushy stand-in tissues. They got a whole array of products. You can join the millions of happy butts falling in love with Hello Tushy. Honestly, folks, super easy to attach. You don't need any electricity. You don't need any, plumbing work. Super easy to attach. Incredibly affordable. Would make a really great gift for people who are sort of like bidet curious. I don't know why they don't do that more. I don't know why they don't add bidet curious to their copy. But that was... Give the gift of a clean bum to yourself or to your loved one this holiday season. Get 10% off plus free shipping right now at hellotushy.com/majority. That's hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off and free shipping. Don't forget to tag at Hello Tushy on social to celebrate your clean bum. Folks, we'll put all the links into the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Also, don't forget Majority Live for our live show January 16th in Boston. Majority Live. Want to welcome, we're getting feedback, I think, from Heather. Heather, you there?
I'm here. You're getting feedback?
I think so. Matt, are you getting feedback?
Yeah, but I think it might sort itself out as it goes, hopefully.
Okay. Well, Heather is here with us via audio only today. Part of our, one of the benefits that we have not being on a broadcast app. We're just on the Majority app. But Heather Parton, the founder and proprietor of the Uber blog Hullaballoo, and the columnist at Salon.com. How are you, Heather?
I am fine. How are you doing? Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. Here with Emma. Yeah, you can't see her.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about, let's work our way backwards, shall we, over the course of the week. Mark Meadows, he is probably going to ignore this subpoena for a contempt of Congress, criminal contempt of Congress. This is all around the January 6th committee, which I think you and I anticipated would start to ramp up, at least at one point when they stopped or at least there was a hiatus in the whole reconciliation and budget stuff. And this is coming out on a day when there's some audio about Trump from that day. But just give me your sense of like where this is going and why Merrick Garland isn't doing anything.
Well, I wish I knew what was going on with Merrick Garland. I heard one of the former DOJ employees, I can't remember which one it was on one of the shows, just saying that it sounds like Merrick Garland is forgetting that he's now a prosecutor and not a judge. He's, that's essentially what he is. And so what's happening is that they seem to be taking their sweet time for reasons that are kind of inexplicable. I mean, this is a pretty open and shut case. They're either going to do it or they're not, right? I mean, this is either Bannon and now probably Meadows, and they're doing this to test it, of course. I mean, that's obvious what they're, and I think Bannon in particular would really like to be prosecuted. I mean, he's going to turn this into a full-fledged, martyrdom political prisoner thing. I think he'd be happy to go to jail and write his manifesto, his own personal Mein Kampf while he's in jail. So he'd be fine with
jail, unfortunately for him, but.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that could be a problem. Maybe somebody can sneak it in for him. But and Meadows, I'm sure he's just doing Trump's bidding. I mean, he is Trump's, main boy. So yeah, I think they're fine with that. The problem is that we shouldn't be fine with the fact that the Department of Justice is dragging its feet on this and not actually going. I mean, this is a confrontation that has to be had. If they refuse to do it, for what will obviously be political reasons, that the Department of Justice has decided to restore norms, and go back and not try and inflame the political situation or whatever by going ahead and indicting them on these charges. There's a serious separation of powers issue here. That is, I think that the Congress, the congressional power to subpoena is probably irreparably harmed if they don't do that. It's very hard to see how they get that back. I mean, all these challenges are coming, from the executive privilege stuff and all the rest. I mean, this is becoming a very, very serious problem that the Department of Justice really needs to take seriously. But, on the other hand, remember, the Department of Justice is part of the executive branch. So, I guess on some level, maybe we shouldn't be surprised that they're protecting executive branch privilege, despite the fact that, Joe Biden has been more than willing to, he has denied the idea of executive privilege in terms of these documents or any of these kinds of tests.
Well, also for Mark Meadows. I mean, that's the thing that I don't is Biden's idea here to get the political value of saying we're not going to protect the executive privilege, but we know that nothing's going to happen anyways. I mean, the other thing that seems to be highly problematic here is that, okay, Bannon, Meadows, whoever doesn't come, whatever the long list of people who flout the subpoena, but how are they going to get oil executives to show up if there's a subpoena?
Exactly.
How are they, the idea that this is even taking this long is absurd to me. I mean, it is, and it's also, I mean, this feels like like you say, almost like a borderline constitutional crisis. I mean, what is it that they need to figure out here as to whether they are in contempt of Congress?
I can't imagine. It's obvious. He basically said Bannon, and now it appears that Meadows too is going to do the same thing, to say, no, we're not doing it. I mean, there's look, you can go before Congress and we've seen plenty of witnesses do this, go before Congress and then just refuse to answer or say, I'm taking the fifth, or claim executive privilege. And, you can turn it. In fact, usually I think they prefer to do that because that creates sort of a show trial aspect to it. And, you think of all the testimony of the mafia back in the 50s or the cigarette guys, I mean, that's something that usually is done sort of on behalf of both parties in it, where you can use this as your way of getting your point across. Bannon is just saying something, no, I do not, I refuse to acknowledge this subpoena. I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to claim any privilege. I'm just going to act like I didn't get it. And that is really, really new. And you're right. I mean, I think this is a very serious separation of powers issue. And of course, we've seen this happening throughout the Trump administration. They were doing this kind of thing. This is the most blatant sort of just, tell with you, I'm not doing it that we've seen. And I'm really quite stunned that the Department of Justice has decided they would drag their feet on this one. It's open and shut. It really is. And I know it will be politically uncomfortable and, the right wing will have a fit, but, when don't they? I mean, they have a fit over, Dr. Seuss. So they're going to have a fit over this. So what? And these are the kind of confrontations that have to be had if they're going to protect these privileges. And, and I granted a lot of it is running out the clock. They want to do that as well. And that's Trump's big gambit. But, Merrick Garland knows that. I mean, he knows that's what the game is. And why is he running out the clock? I mean, that makes no sense at all.
I don't know. I mean, I could ask the same thing of the committee. It is November. And why is it that there's only 3 subpoenas that they've issued at this point, or 2 subpoenas?
Well, I think they've issued a whole bunch more, but there's 2 that have not been acknowledged. I mean, there've been a whole bunch of subpoenas issued. I think it's like 35.
I guess my question is why wasn't there more happening 4 or 5 months ago? I mean, because at this time next year, we could be looking at a lame duck Congress.
We probably will be. And they know that. And I don't know either. And I find that now there's a lot of stuff that's been going on behind the scenes. And they're saying that they've gotten a lot of testimony from a bunch of cooperating witnesses, et cetera, et cetera. That's terrific. But what I don't understand is why that's happening behind the scenes. This is the kind of inquiry that needs to be held in public. And I just assumed I can't even believe they wouldn't do it. Here they were out there in Virginia and in New Jersey and in California during the recall, a month and a half ago, that they're running against Donald Trump. And yet they have this great opportunity
to be showcasing the total, depravity of Donald Trump and the January 6th insurrection and all of the coup plotting that went on television day after day. They could have been doing this, and they've held all of this testimony behind closed doors. And I honestly just don't get that. I mean, the way they did it in Watergate, for instance, they would have them testify behind closed doors to staff members, and they'd find out what they were going to say. But then they immediately put them on television. Yeah. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. How much of this is coming from the top? I want to know, because to me, this could be Garland could be holding his fire because Biden is suggesting it. And a little bit, what it kind of reeks of to me is the Obama administration choosing to look forward and not backward. I mean, the House and the committee there, they want to clearly continue this, and one, to hold them accountable to, because it's helpful politically. But Biden's never been that kind of guy. And I'd guess that, once you're in power and once you're the president, you worry, okay, how's this going to look when I leave office? Is this going to open up anything for me? And also, Biden and the Obama administration might have a lot more in common in terms of holding Republicans accountable than we'd like to think.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, and all of this, these kinds of things tend to be. And I mean, I was writing about this long before the election, just wait, everybody, because there is a huge incentive for a new administration to come in and just want to try and leave all that unpleasantness behind. Now, granted, the unpleasantness was absolutely monumental in the Trump administration, particularly the ending of it, and the threat of Trump, coming back it puts it on a completely different level than most new administrations dealing with a departing administration. But, it's not surprising. I mean, you can see them kind of thinking, well, hey, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to pass legislation. We've got to do this, that, and the other. We've got to get our frontline people elected. We've got to do this. How much do we really want to focus on how much do we want Steve Bannon out there? How much do we want to see Mark Meadows out there? Maybe we just need to kind of let the House committee, and I'm going to give the House committee credit. I think they really are, and not just for cynical reasons. I get the feeling that a lot of them are really they were personally, offended and horrified by what happened on January 6th. And some of them are constitutional scholar types who really do see the threat of what happened there and how that kind of thing could happen again. So I think that on the committee, they may want to do things, and perhaps they're being held back from some, I could see them saying, well, look, we've got this big legislative package we need to get through. Maybe not, push it publicly right now while we're trying to do it. But if that's the case, it's a huge mistake. It's huge. It's huge political. I mean, I just will never, ever concede to the idea that somehow or another letting Trump and the Republicans off the hook is a great idea. And really, we just need to move forward. Never, ever works. They try it, they do it, and it's always a mistake.
I think, hold that thought, because I mean, this is our segue into where we are with the reconciliation bill. But here is a clip of Donald Trump, audio clip, talking to Jonathan Karl. I guess he's releasing it in promotion of his book. I don't know when this interview took place. Do we know when this interview took place?
March 18th, 2021.
So, of course, it is, you got to monetize this stuff. If you're a reporter, you can't necessarily put it out when you get it 9 months ago. But here, and I want to be clear, I was being facetious and disgusted by it. But here is a clip of Donald Trump talking about that day and about Mike Pence.
Were you worried about him during that siege? Were you worried about his safety?
No, I thought he was well protected, and I had heard that he was in good shape. Mm-hmm. No, because I had heard he was in very good shape. But no.
You heard those chants. That was terrible. I mean,
he could have. Well, the people were very angry.
They're saying, "Hang Mike
Because
Pence."
it's common sense, John. It's common sense that you're supposed to protect. How can you, if you know a vote is fraudulent, right? Yeah. How can you pass on a fraudulent vote to Congress?
Now, some people, I almost don't even want to address it. Some people have said, like, well, no, Carl said the thing about the hanging. He probably didn't even hear that. He was just, well, he knew that they were chanting that. He was responding to the chants. And he's like, well, they were upset. You have to understand, you got to protect, what am I looking to protect? My presidency. You got to protect my presidency.
Well,
and,
I mean, we should just say, though, if this happened in March, or so this was a conversation on March 18th, 2021, we saw the footage of the insurrectionists nearly within a 0.5 second window, nearly basically coming into contact with Mike Pence as he was shuffled into another room by security. They were seconds away from actually getting their hands on him.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was in the impeachment trial. They showed that. And, he was impeached over this. He knows the story. And a lot of the questions that came from the Republicans in the impeachment trial, the ones that voted for impeachment, like Mitt Romney, were asking, what about the Mike Pence thing was huge to them. And so of course, Trump was aware of it. I just think, and I want to get out here out front on this, because this is going to be how I monetize this. I'm going to be putting together T-shirts, Trump 2024, it's common sense to hang Mike Pence, because I think that is, at that, and it's the most original slogan that Trump will ever have, because he's stolen every other one that he got, like Make America Great, which he stole from Ronald Reagan. So common sense to hang Mike Pence. I mean, obviously, I think we're going to see that at Trump rallies, and they're fine with that. I mean, if you see these interviews with people at rallies, you ask about Mike Pence, you go, oh, he's horrible. He's a traitor. Trump, this is where we are. I mean, we've got vigilantes up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, going on trial and crying, and he's probably going to get off. You've got Trump out there saying, hang Mike Pence. It's common sense to hang Mike Pence. And, this is where we're at. I mean, that's the reality here. And, heading back into what we were just talking about, the urgency of that particular thing, I can't understand why the Democrats, why their hair isn't on fire. Because, Glenn Youngkin, the great white bread hope of Virginia, who just apparently is the new face of the Republican Party, the post-Trump Republican Party, he didn't have a bad thing to say about Donald Trump or any of that. And he basically also ran his campaign on election integrity. He held election integrity, in quotes, workshops and all of this. So, I mean, the Democrats don't understand that this is the party. This is the GOP. This isn't Trump. It isn't anything. It's all of them. It's the whole damn place. And so, I'm still kind of left here shaking my head that they can't seem to wrap their minds around that and deal with it.
Well, also hang Mike DeSantis too. DeSantis should also be hung. DeSantis too. Anybody else who might challenge me, for that matter. Tom Cotton, and that
he doesn't like Pompeo.
Common sense, Pompeo also. DeSantis, Ron DeSantis. Hang them all. This. This notion that waiting for the Republicans to come back around, this is all part of it, I think. It's all part of it. The Pelosi and the Democrats, at least the leadership, we need a Republican Party. We need a Republican Party. We need a Republican Party. Well, now you have one. There you go. Congratulations.
Not just a Republican Party. We need a strong Republican Party. She said like every 3 weeks. It's, talk about T-shirts and taglines. That's Pelosi's.
And so here we are, Heather. Let's just shift into this. We haven't spoken, I think, since the bipartisan bill passed. That was, I guess, a week ago. Basically in the middle of the night. The bipartisan bill passes. I think it was it 19 Republicans that voted for it, and they are getting death threats. I think 3 of them, at least, were already planning not to return to Congress. I wonder if that if that number ticks up just a little bit. 6 Democrats voted against, the squad members voted against it because they were afraid of losing leverage on the reconciliation bill. And I mean, it appears that they were correct. And because we have Joe Manchin coming out, basically shifting from the CBO score to now just the concept of inflation. If you're worried about inflation, driving down drug prices for Medicare recipients and across the board, because that Medicare ends up being sort of the benchmark for these drug prices, that would be extremely helpful for a cohort of people who deal with who have to deal with probably the highest rates of inflation, older people and people who are in need of medication. If you're worried about inflation hurting working people, maybe you would extend the child tax credit. Maybe you would expand unemployment benefits. He's lying. He doesn't care about this. It's become the new sort of deficit talking point that just still doesn't have the salience it used to have. And it appears that he's not like it's possible there's not going to even be a reconciliation bill at this point. It seems to me. What was the big hurry with the bipartisan infrastructure bill? Like, I mean, what difference would it have made if it passes in December or January of next year? It's not a controversial bill.
I think it was, my assumption is they panicked. That for some reason, the 1.9% victory of Glenn Youngkin in Virginia and the ensuing insane media hysteria over that, which, was just beyond anything. I mean, I had to turn it off and stop reading. I couldn't stand it anymore. It was ridiculous. That they panicked and basically decided that they had to get something, my God, because, we're losing and the Republicans are winning and, we better get this thing passed. And I'm sure that on the Biden side, and I feel pretty confident that this is true, that they use that as an excuse to get people off the dime in the House. And that the Senate came in and said, look, we're losing our Republicans over here and we may not get it passed and we've got to do this, that, and the other. And, they basically used that as an excuse. That was I have rarely seen an off-year election have that kind of reaction. It was completely beyond ridiculous. Virginia always votes for the out party in that off-year gubernatorial election. They've been doing it since the late 70s with only one exception. And here's the flip side. Up in New Jersey, they do the same thing, except this time the Democrats beat the odds for the first time since 1988. Phil Murphy actually pulled it out. So that whole thing was ridiculous. But getting back to what they did legislatively, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Now, maybe I'm wrong and maybe there was some other thing going on, but what else was happening? Nothing. We were we'd been in the same stalemate for months. So, I don't know what happened. And as far as leverage is concerned, I mean, there is no leverage. And, and I'm not even sure the infrastructure bill was leverage. It's like, maybe it was, but. I mean,
I think that's it. Maybe it was, but now there's not even a maybe.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. And it's not just leverage with Manchin. Okay. Because, and so, and it's too early to assess whether Jayapal, made a mistake or not. Although, we're getting closer to that time, because this was ultimately, and maybe I don't know how many votes were there. It's hard for me to imagine that had Jayapal said, we're not moving, or had tried to whip another 10 votes, 12 votes, to counteract those Republican votes that she couldn't have. I don't know. But it's not just leverage with Manchin, right? I mean, it's leverage. There were other people who, certainly the administration, desperately needed that bill. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just leverage with Manchin. It's basically saying, Joe Biden, you're the president. You have the ability to twist arms in a way that we cannot. AOC, Pramila Jayapal, doesn't matter who it is in the House, has nothing on Joe Manchin. Maybe there's nothing to have on Joe Manchin anywhere. And if that's the case, well, then this is a foregone conclusion anyways, and you pass the bipartisan bill if you really want to in January. But now they have no, like, they cannot, and I think there is a tremendous amount of urgency in the White House, but to pass, obviously, the prime staple of his agenda. I mean, nobody believes, I think, that this sort of like extended highway bill is really, a signature achievement of the Biden administration. But you would have increased the urgency, at least with the Biden administration. You would have increased. There would have been an increased urgency, and who knows if they can't find anything to leverage. I mean, we were just saying before you came on, Joe Manchin, some aspiring prosecutor somewhere could, I think, spend a lot of time making Joe Manchin's life pretty miserable, and probably should, just for the sake of justice. But even beyond that, to convince him, like, you want to be on the side of the president here, because he's still got the executive wing of the government for another 3 years. It is becoming increasingly clear that, Joe Biden's promise is not as much, may not be as worth as much as Joe Biden sweating this out a little bit.
Right. That may be, we'll see. We'll see whether or not but it seemed to me when it happened, when they decided, came out and said, well, we trust the president. That was the word that everybody used, Jayapal, Pelosi, everybody, basically saying, we're throwing this hot potato back to him, and we're trusting him to get this through for us. And I have no idea what kind of promises or reassurance could he have given them? I can't even imagine what it was. But whatever it was, that's pretty much where it ended. Now, I'm sure that Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden were all talking to one another about all this. And I know that Jayapal was in the White House, and I have no idea what they could have been thinking, other than, we just have to get this thing out of our, we have to get this thing off our desk. We have to get it off our desk because we lost one governorship in Virginia, and the sky is falling, and we can't wait another minute, and Biden's approval ratings are in the dirt. And so we just have to do this thing. Now, what I question is the idea that passing this thing, if those were the considerations, that we've got to get Biden's numbers up and we've got to get things moving, in the right direction, et cetera, did passing that do that? I mean, did that help his approval ratings? Do you think it would? I mean, maybe in the long run, if you put a whole bunch of stuff together and the economy improves and COVID comes under control, then I can see them saying, hey, look, he can run on this, or we can run on the Biden administration's achievements. But just passing that bill in that moment, I don't know, it kind of looked a little weak to me. Looked like, oh my God, we're chicken littles here, one wrong, move happens here, and we're running for the door. And I don't understand that. I mean, it seems like a crazy way to think, but that's how it looked to me anyway. I mean, just looking.
I think the myopia is just so intense that they see, Chuck Todd say they finally passed an infrastructure bill, and then they're all excited about it.
Right, and 2 minutes later, inflation is destroying everything in the country. And look at us, seriously. They get great job numbers one day, and oh, look, the economy's rebounding. There's great growth, blah, blah, blah. And then the next minute, it's, oh my God, gas prices and milk prices are up. Everything's horrible. So if they're going on the media cycle, which I kind of suspect they are, they've got a problem. But they've got a problem. Because the media cycle is completely out to lunch, and it's as bad as it's ever been. And what we're seeing is just this lurching from one extreme to the other, and that's not going to help. So whatever they do legislatively and whatever they do in policy, they have to just do it because they're going to do it and hope for the best, that it helps them in the end. But they've just got to grind it out, because the media cycle, and I do think that Manchin, part of what motivates him is that media cycle too.
Yep.
He's obviously an egomaniac. I mean, that's all, no doubt about that. And I don't even know if he really understands the ramifications of what he's doing. It just seems, like you said, he went from 1 minute saying, he's wanted to pause, and then before that he wanted a $4 trillion bill, and now it's inflation, and that, I mean, he's all over the place, just looking for reasons. And it looks like he's, watching. I mean, I guess CNN is what he's watching. I don't know what he's watching, but he's watching some kind of mainstream media that is feeding into this, and then getting lobbyists in both ears, telling
Maybe
him.
Watching CNBC, because yesterday we saw a clip of Ken Langone waxing poetic.
Right.
Well, Langone is raising money for him now.
He said he's basically break records for a fundraiser for Manchin, and Ken Langone, behemoth of a Republican fundraiser, but he was singing his praises. Thank God that he's in the party, etc. So
I love Joe Manchin, and Mitch McConnell too says the same thing. I pray for Manchin in cinema every night, he says. So, Manchin's getting a lot of love from certain quarters that, I'm sure are having an influence on him as well. And he's not getting a lot of love from quarters that, are critical of his behavior here. And part of it is just he's doing all this stuff in public. I mean, Kyrsten Sinema drives me nuts, and I think that she's really lost the plot. But in a way, I've come to kind of admire the fact that she's not doing it in front of the cameras every day, just simply because, yes, we were all wondering where she was at, but at some point she kind of seems to have anyway come to she got what she wanted, and now she's shutting up. Manchin, he's just, there is no appeasing him apparently.
Yeah, and the interesting thing to me, I mean, is this question of inflation, because I'm having a hard time assessing how it's impacting people. Now, obviously, I happen to think that the rollback of unemployment benefits and the cessation of child tax credits, because now we're in the era, or the brief period of time where it's going to be actually rebated. I think it only goes through the next month or two in terms of where it's actually paid out on a monthly basis, and then it comes back in April, and those type of benefits. I wonder if that's not, to the extent that people are hurting, if that's not hurting more than the inflation. Now, gas prices obviously will do it, and there's at least some evidence that what we're seeing is a function of Saudi Arabia trying to essentially
pay back Donald Trump for his
or pay back Donald Trump, or to discipline Joe Biden, whatever that is, and the one of the big things I think is just going to be like COVID. It feels like the one thing that the Biden administration can really have genuine impact over. I mean, I think there's some stuff they could do in terms of the supply chain, but everybody I talk to and I have a couple of friends who are in construction, and they're just they can't get anything.
Yeah.
And it's just they're talking about how they're getting, by the time it gets to, even our ports, it's not there. It's going to Europe. It's having a tough time coming out of Asia. This is construction stuff, and they're, apply for everything from plywood to hardware to different, hinges. I mean, just everything. And part of it is that we don't build this stuff in this country. But the White House seems to be on the verge of basically pushing for, everybody to get the booster shot. The data on the booster is super high. Meanwhile, we're denying a huge portion of the rest of the world shots. So I'm not so sure as to the how just it is. But they're going to do this. We're already well past 1 million kids who have gotten vaccinated. We're going to have this big bump or a significant bump in the winter months. But increasingly, we're going to move to some form of normalcy, short of some type of variant that we can't predict. But once they start rolling out these therapies that Merck and Pfizer have, I think things are going to change pretty dramatically. And like, I think just people's mood about what's going on is going to change, and they're not going to be as susceptible to these stories about inflation that, in October polling, only 5% of the population said that they were feeling the impact of.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what they're feeling the impact of is this, relentless pounding of the story of inflation. That you'll see in the news, to the extent that people watch it or hear it. That's what they're hearing. So that it has an effect. Even though, I don't even think people are totally sure what it is or what it means. I mean, part of inflation, and this is the good side, is wages. Wages are going up. That's inflation as well. Now, granted, the latest studies sort of show that inflation, that it's being sort of balanced out in some respects by consumer goods sort of going up at the same level that wages are going up. So, you end up, it's sort of a wash. But presumably this new energy that's happening in the workforce, that is a huge positive. That may be the best thing that comes out of this pandemic, is the fact that workers have sort of discovered their power. And my personal feeling is, I'm basing this on absolutely nothing, is that a lot of this is finally the end of the hangover from the financial crisis, which created a gigantic sense of paranoia in the workforce about losing your job and losing everything. And that affected an entire generation of workers that came online at that point, that didn't realize that they had any power. Suddenly the pandemic sort of showed, yes, there is power in that. So, that's the other side of it. I think as people begin to absorb the fact that they have choices, they have the ability to do this, and then see how that affects their lives, as inflation and this supply chain business, the gas prices and the rest of it perhaps starts to normalize, hopefully. And, most of the economists that are watching this, except for, self-serving people, like Larry Summers,
Right,
who was all over TV, are saying, look, this is an effect of it. It's not a structural problem with inflation. What we're seeing is a reaction to a global, a complete upheaval that caused this supply chain thing. And this is going to normalize, and it's going to, start to calm down, and people will do it. So I'm just hopeful that the employment side of it does not calm down.
Right.
And people are able to hang on to that part of it, and perhaps start to reap some of the benefits of having that happen. So, we'll see what happens. But a lot of this, I just don't pay attention to what the media is saying about this. I think this is just they're looking for drama, and this is the drama of the day, and it'll be something else tomorrow.
And it's all everyone's friends are concerned about, like, in the media, about inflation, because it's much more of a creditor problem than the debtor's problem. We have, over $14 trillion of debt in this country. And so something like $800 billion in this, like, 6% consumer inflation increase, consumer price index increase, has been transferred back to the debtors here, because when inflation goes up, the value of the debt goes down. And that's what I think is driving this. And all of the histrionic coverage about this is like, how do we show how Main Street is being affected by this problem that we're all concerned about? And it's so manufactured.
That's a really interesting point. It just goes to show that, the influences that people have, how that kind of filters down into the coverage in the elite media. And I hadn't even thought of that, but that's got to be a concern for the creditor, the creditor faction in our system.
Well, that's certainly where you get a Larry Summers type coming in, and certainly the bankers. We should just say from Manu Raju at CNN from about an hour ago, in terms of Manchin. Manchin thanked Ro Khanna for saying that he's not racist after Cori Bush attacked him. Manchin told Jayapal she has no leverage over him. Tense talks over paid leave. Biden warns progressives the whole agenda could sink. Progressives should be warning Biden of this. I mean, Biden's in the same boat, but this is why I worry about Jayapal, okaying that vote, because Biden's going to say that either way. It's just that in the other sort of parallel universe where Jayapal is holding out to maybe she doesn't have the ability to do it, but I'm just saying. Then he says this and she has something to offer him, that is not the reconciliation bill. It is the other part. And so she could say, I got a warning for you too. The bipartisan thing could also sink. So, but we'll see. I worry about this. All right. Lastly, I just want to take just a second to talk about the Rittenhouse thing. I have always had a practice since not paying attention to the O.J. Simpson court case of not watching these things. I don't watch them. I don't feel like, for me, it's a question of, are charges going to be brought? Okay, then I'm out, and we'll let a jury do it. But I will say this, there's two things that strike me just even from my sort of perch of not paying attention to this. I don't think I've ever seen a judge who has been more explicit about where they are politically in the context of a criminal case. I'm shocked. Honestly, I'm shocked by it. And I have a very jaded perspective on judges broadly, but he seems to be advertising this. But the other thing is just sort of, if he gets off of these murders, which, it's starting to, who knows? But there is a real fundamental problem with the idea that, bring your weapons to protests type of situation. That seems to be very problematic to me. And he's going to be celebrated, one way or the other, probably both ways. He's already has been by the right, but it's sort of fascinating that this is the new era we're moving into.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. This is the era of right-wing vigilantism and also, extrajudicial killings on the part of, right-wing police. This is happening as well. You remember, there's a corollary to the Rittenhouse situation. There was a situation in Portland where an Antifa guy got into a beef with it was called Patriot Prayer, Praying Patriots or something, in the streets of Portland, and the Antifa guy shot the MAGA guy. And so he left and went home, and the U.S. Marshals, they had some kind of task force up there, went and just killed him, and they just executed him outside the house. There was no, due process. He didn't have a trial. They just killed him.
They pulled up on him. They pulled up on him as he was getting into his car, and they just opened fire.
They just opened fire, no warning. He had no weapon. They just did it. They tried to cover it up. There was a big, expose in the New York Times. They went and really, looked into this. It was a great story, actually. And Trump, meanwhile, pretty much claimed that he put out the hit on this guy. He said, I told the U.S. Marshals to go in and do it. And he said, this is what we do. There has to be retribution. So these are the kinds of things that we're starting to see happening in our society. And over all the years that they've been coddling the gun fetishists and the NRA and allowing things like 17-year-old boys to walk around the streets with AR-15 strapped to their back, and that's somehow legal, not to mention in the middle of a chaotic melee that was happening with cops all over the place. And this kid was allowed to walk around, and apparently he's not being charged with that because it's not illegal to do it. And then you're walking around with your gun in a chaotic situation, and there's some kind of confrontation. You start shooting, and they call it self-defense. We're seeing that happen over and over and over again in all kinds of different situations. Look at George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. And, that kid didn't even have a gun. He's walking around with some Skittles in his pocket. This new idea that we have now, and they didn't even have this in the Wild West. Wyatt Earp, he told people leave their guns at the, at the town city limits. You didn't get to walk around with your guns in that town. This idea now that we are dealing with, this self-defense, stand your ground, castle doctrine, that you're allowed to go in and defend store owners and help the cops and do all these things, these average citizens. And you're right. It's about
using guns for political purposes. What we're talking about now is people being armed in political arguments. And you see people showing up at places like Moms Demand Action, you know, the anti-gun lobby or, you know, group, and they'll show up with their guns and just stand there. And, you know, there are people standing there with their kids and stuff. You know, you telling me that doesn't quell free speech? It's like the Second Amendment is overruling the First Amendment, and we're seeing this happen over and over and over again. It's very, very worrying. And I think Rittenhouse is going to get off, and he's going to be a hero. The Patriot, I saw on Twitter that the Proud Boys are putting out, you know, new flags and new T-shirts and stuff that said, you know, what is it now? I wish I hadn't brought it up because I can't remember what it said. But it was a Kyle Rittenhouse thing. You know, then they're going to be selling those things. So he's going to be a big hero.
And we should just say, right now, the Supreme Court is hearing a case that comes out of New York State. And it is it basically says that you can't have restrictions on carrying firearms in public places. That the New York State law, I guess it is too restrictive. And you know, so this is a problem that's going to get worse, not better. Heather, as always, a pleasure and also sad.
As usual.
Emma sends her regards. She had to just jump off for a second, but we will hope to talk to you again shortly. Of course, everybody should be checking out Hullaballoo on a daily basis. And your pieces twice a week in salon.com. Heather Parton, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Sam. I enjoyed it.
Folks, in a moment, we're going to bring in David Roth, who is apparently vying for athletic director of the University of Austin, I guess, athletic program. I don't know how else to express that. Should we just bring him on?
Yeah, here you go.
Emma will be back in a moment. David Roth, welcome back to the program. Of course, co-owner and founder of the Defector Media and host of the Distraction podcast. How are you, David?
I'm good, man. How are things?
Pretty good. Thank you for wearing a different colored shirt than me. So
yeah,
that we do
I remember
not have
last
the confusion that comes with you coming on. I really want to wait for Emma. She's going to be back in a moment. But let's go over the broad strokes of what the University of Texas is. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit on this program. We haven't focused on it, but why don't
May I make a quick point of order call?
Sure, of course.
You mean the University of Austin?
Oh, Austin. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yes. And I get confused between the made-up college and university and
one of them is in the Big 12, and one of them I think I have bigger plans for.
All right. Well, we should just why don't you give people just the basics as to what the University of Austin is, or hopes to be, or purports to be, and then we'll get on to your, I guess, entrepreneurial education. Would you consider yourself an education entrepreneur?
I consider myself, well, yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of like a full spectrum disruption type. And so for me, it's about finding the space into which I can insert my disruption juice and then have it expand to crack things open further. It's disgusting.
That sounds great.
Reading about volcanoes earlier,
disruption juice. Okay.
Yeah. We don't usually use phrases like that in the field because people find them so upsetting.
But that's what it is.
Yeah.
In the academic material, that's where you find that term.
So I guess if we're going to start with the juice, the University of Austin is that. That's it's backed by a guy named Joe Lonsdale, who's a co-founder of Palantir, which is kind of like in the same way that I'm a co-founder of Defector. Palantir is kind of doing the same thing that we're doing in sports media for state surveillance, and that. So again, another space that really you'd want to see given a kick in the pants, so that you could better have your face recognized by the NSA. So he's a creep, seems like, just like a Silicon Valley, like Peter Thiel associate type of dude. So this was his sort of dream thing that was announced by Barry Weiss's Substack. So you're going to hear basically is a lot of names that if you're a normal person that's watching this, most of these names aren't going to mean anything to you. And if you're somebody who, like me, goes online and gets upset all day about the same like 10 people, like all 10 of those people are involved in this school. It's basically like an attempt at a libertarian liberal arts university where people that are like mostly known for being grouchy in print or for having been fired from state schools for being so disagreeable about like gender and race. Like this is a place where all of them can get together and I guess like just teach classes about the racial aspect of crime stats.
Do we have a sense of how this is going to be? Is this going to be a brick and mortar thing, or is it going to be all on? It is the plan,
right? So that was the part that
I don't know. I can't decipher. Like, is this going to be just like an online type of like what is it? The University of Phoenix or something like that?
Yeah,
it's all online, or is this going to be a brick and mortar? And they're, what I'm also fascinated by is that they're trying to get a not-for-profit status for it. And I wouldn't be surprised for them to say like, we couldn't get one, so we're going to have to be a for-profit institution.
Yeah, we got canceled by the tax man when we were trying to start our school that was going to give degrees in like optimism and like owning.
But do we know, is
Bitcoin.
it going to be brick and mortar?
That's what they say. So the thing about it that's like, so it's different than like Prager University, for instance, another proud American institution. That's a
or
fucking
Trump
YouTube
University.
channel.
It's different from Trump University.
And Trump University's brick and mortar, like that was just like the banquet space at the Radisson, right, where you could like get people together to talk about flipping houses or whatever, and then get their picture taken next to like a cardboard cutout of the man himself. This, they've like, a little bit of money's been spent on it already. Like they don't have a space of their own. Like the address on their website is like an oil and gas law company in Austin. Like it's basically just office space that they have there. But they hired a guy away from the St. John's College in Annapolis, which is like a great books university. And he's, you know, there's a whole other thing about like great books education that I'm not nearly informed enough to really go on about. But it's like, it's a real thing, you know, like they read Plato and they talk about it. And that's nice. It's better than what I did in college. Probably get more out of it than what I got out of what I did in college, but it's real. Like, and they, in their announcement, they're like, yeah, we're looking for space. Like we want to have buildings, we want to have residences, but also their timeline for all of this is extremely ambitious. And I don't know, especially putting it in Austin, which is in the middle of this incredible gentrifying surge. Like, well, it's not like there's a ton of space there.
But that's what I find sort of like fascinating. Why Austin? I mean, if you're looking for space, why would you go to Austin? Is it because that there's like a tech boom there and and there's some founder? Is the founder money there?
I mean, the founder is in Silicon Valley, as far as I know, like everybody else that's up there, you know, like just sort of like living in like a really nice suburb, like living in Palo Alto and just spending all day fuming about the guy who's the district attorney for San Francisco. That's basically like that lifestyle now.
Right.
But the Austin element, like on their website, they have like a, you know, FAQ section. And in addressing the Austin thing, the literal sentence that they have for it is like, if it's good enough for Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, it's good enough for us. Just kidding. It's actually because it's like this big hub of culture. But like when you are like, you're starting a university and you're also going out of your way to be like, we're the university that likes Joe Rogan and that wants to try to bring a Joe Rogan approach to pedagogy to your kids. Like that signals to me that you are not serious.
What?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Like maybe I'm being unfair. Obviously Elon, of course, hard to gainsay. He's accomplished so much. I mean, just no one has been more epic probably than him over the last.
Do you have a sense of why they named it? And hey, David, by the way.
Hi. Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Do you have a sense of why they named it University of Austin? Because it's pretty close to University of Texas at Austin.
Yes.
I
why?
literally just said practically.
Yeah.
By mistake, I said it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, is to confuse people deliberately, or?
It's really weird. You would think that they would start, like I was hoping for a more ambitious name, you know, because like usually when you see like things that are funded by rich libertarians at universities. It's like there's a lot of them now, but they usually have hilarious names, like either really grandiose things where they're like the Publius Institute at James Madison University. And you're like, oh, that's like a Coke thing because they like things when they sound Latin. And then, you know, or like Mercatus is the funny one. That's the one at George Mason. And it's like they're trying to sort of like retcon some respectability onto like just the worst and most unpopular ideas in human history. Like, and that's, you know, good for them, I guess, in that regard. But like, this is a big swing as a school. Like they want to be the place where all of my least favorite Twitter posters are teaching as like tenured professionals.
Are they all going to move to Austin?
They're not going to.
Like, I don't understand. Like I just feel like the like, did you think like Barry Weiss like jumped the gun here? I mean, this just seems like a very weird time in the process to have an array of like, who are these people? They're all going to be teachers there. Is that, I mean,
it's
like,
hard to say. There's
like
like
if you're
advisors.
Like that's the thing is that because I think there's other clues that it may not be serious. Is I guess my point. It's not just the Joe Rogan and Elon Musk and their FAQ. That the other clues feel to me like you're going to get buildings, you're going to establish a curriculum, and none of that's happened. But you do have a FAQ. And a whole list of people you've already hired to be your teachers?
Or they're just like willing to lend their names to it. That part of it is amazing though. It's like, I guess, you know, there haven't been that many new universities founded since, you know, in my lifetime. This is the first one that has like a sizzle reel, you know, that has like one of those things. That's
what I mean. Like this is like you guys launching some type of like streaming app. Like what, like you're trying to get people like, this is not the way that you like. And what are they trying to do? Are they trying to raise funds from?
Yes.
Oh, is that what's going on?
That's basically it. I mean, I think that they're like the initial public offering of this idea was mainly like, do you want to become one of our founders? Because I think it's like $250 million they're trying to raise for it. And so
wait a second. Let me just see what I have in my banking app.
Because it's like the sort of thing where if you give enough, like what if the football team played in a stadium with your name on it? And there's a big statue of you out front with a microphone. So you think about it, that could be yours for just, I don't know if you have like $75 million or something like that you'd want to contribute. Yeah, it's definitely worth checking. They take Venmo, I think.
They will take a Venmo? All right.
Yeah.
Well,
but it's like, that's a huge ask. Even if you can see, I mean, like they're definitely targeting at a certain type of person who has money. It's just like, you know, the idea of being like, wouldn't it be incredible if all of these people that like post about gender and crime all the time, like what if they were all in the same place and like teaching kids about stuff like that? Wouldn't that be sick? And wouldn't the people that you hate the most be amazed and angered by it? But that's the part of it that I think is like, again, signals that it's not serious, is that there's this fundraising element, which again is not traditionally done through social media channels on this scale. And then when you look at on their sort of like, what can you do in the FAQ thing, where it's like, well, how can I help? I like this project. They're like, well, you can give us money. And then after that, they're like, if you don't have the kind of money that if you are not comfortable donating $1 million to our imaginary college, like you could just post about us online. And that's like sort of posited as like the other way that you can help, like that either you can cut a 7-figure check or you could like attach a couple of like cry laughing emojis to the announcement and like do the same work.
It's so thirsty for money. We have this FAQ up, and Bradley, if you could put this up, if you scroll to the bottom, it says, sounds great, how can I support you? And every dollar counts. You can support us financially by going to our support us page. And then if you go to the bottom even further, I'm not rich, but I want to help. What can I do? We're grateful for any gift of any size. Like, just so, please, just like $17 donation, whatever you want.
I'm broke. Well, we'll still take money from you.
Think of the idea of Barry Weiss cutting one of those, like, I'm once again asking for your support videos.
Crowdfunding university. That's one way to do it, right?
Hit the donate button, because I find this is what's sort of amazing to me. You're waiting to see if you're going to get a nonprofit status, wouldn't that like greatly like change the implications of this donation? Like keep going down. Like, I mean, where does this donation go to? Go back one. Like, what are they like? Is this like one of those like Indiegogo things? Like, if it doesn't get funded, do we get our money back? Or is this just sort of like, well, sorry, we couldn't do it?
It's a chicken or the egg thing. You know, what comes first, the
contributors
status
to
or the
Cicero? Money? Oh, you're right. They did this.
So Cicero Research, that's Lonsdale's, that's sort of the shell thing for this. It's a nonprofit that otherwise has nothing on their docket that anyone can find. And that's like sort of the mechanism through which this is going to be funded. That like, I think it is like, because otherwise they still have to do, and they will eventually have to jump through all of the hoops that every college does. Like they're going to have to do like Title IX compliance and like all the shit that actually like makes colleges expensive, or, you know, one of the things that makes colleges expensive. But right now it's just, you can give money to the Cicero Institute, which I guess does kind of cover the.
That's exactly
like,
right. The
right.
Weird,
Why isn't this pretentiously named enough? Like,
I mean,
right.
I love one. This just seems like one of those old Kickstarters. Do you remember those? Like that. I mean, that's kind of it. GoFundMe's replaced that a little bit, but I love like envisioning what their different, you know, institutions will look like their athletic building. Who they're going to name that after? I don't know how many athletes are going to be involved in this, but I mean, maybe Joe Rogan. Maybe it'll be the Joe Rogan.
The Rogan Dome.
Yeah, the Joe Rogan Dome and Jordan Peterson's School of Psychology.
Yeah,
that's what's gonna.
There's so much. If you look at the degrees that they're granting to, it's like
how are they granting degrees?
Well, they're not doing it yet.
That's the thing, is like, I just don't like, this is just bizarro.
So they're going to start, their first course is going to start this summer, and it's called the Forbidden Courses or something incredible like that. And it's just basically, I think, like a place where you can. It's going to be. I don't think it's going to confer credit. It's for undergrads. Right. And they're going to, like, I guess, get together at like a WeWork in Austin and just talk about phrenology with like Professor Andrew Sullivan for a long time.
Yes, skull sizes.
Yeah,
I definitely feel like this is going to be like, it's more like the Pompeii Foundation. Like at one point, like it's just everybody's just they're going to get all this money come in and just be like, all right, we couldn't do it, but at least you got a tax deduction and we tried. And that's the important part. That's what makes we wanted to learn here.
The Kickstarter thing funnier too, because it's like there were cases of like Kickstarters back when that was like a big deal. I think it was like one of the guys from Animal Collective raised like $100,000 to make an album and then just like never made the album.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And like that can happen, you know, like it's the sort of thing where like you're just like basically telling Amanda Palmer that you respect her so much that you're going to give her $1,000 on spec and hope that you're going to get something back from it, but she doesn't owe you shit after that.
Oh yeah, and like worst case scenario for them, they're able to just cash out a little bit. I mean, I don't know, Sam, you can go, but I'm just curious if the plan B is to set up some sort of PAC where they can dubiously fund themselves. Which, I mean, there's so many sham PACs out there, people don't realize.
Well, that's what this is.
Yeah, well,
it's already there, right?
Is that what the language says? I mean, what language? I guess, but
yeah, it's so nascent. It's hard to even say.
Yeah.
What the goal is. I think the thing that in trying to like write about it and stuff, it's like, I don't trust it, not because I know anything about it. No one really does know anything about it. And this thing that's on Barry Weiss's Substack, that the Pano Canelos or whatever his name is, the guy that they hired from St. John's, it's like a familiar experience if you've read a lot of stuff that people like this write, where it's like, they'll get halfway through describing a problem and you're like, I actually agree with this so far. And like, colleges are too expensive. There's too much administrative shit. It's not, you know, and it feels too much like a business. And then when they get to the part where they make their argument, you realize that you are in space. Right. And that like, it's just, they don't have an understanding of it that tracks with any available experience here on Earth, but they have their own sort of like way of addressing it. And so in this case, the idea that like, colleges are too censorious and that, you know, professors are not respected merely because they have dedicated themselves entirely trying to prove that trans people aren't real or whatever the fuck it is. And then like their peers don't want to work with them and students don't want to learn from them, that like that is seen as like the actual problem that undergirds all of this. And that, like, I think that like for people that trust the market and free market forces so much and that want to make that a big part of this, at some point, like people are voting with their feet on like whether they want to learn from the anti-vax psychology professor at Portland State University. Like, you know, take the hint. Like that's clearly what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I mean, I'm curious once they get there, if the Cicero Foundation is a nonprofit, right? And they're running it through that, they're going to have to release like what people are getting paid. I'm curious to find out, like, is Barry Weiss doing this like for free? She's doing this for the sake of education at the moment. I'm really struck by what's happening with these type of enterprises, because I mean, ultimately this is going to be some type of like, if not for profit, quasi type of situation where I find it hard to believe they're going to get accredited, but if they do, it's going to be just for them to get student loans. I mean, that's the other thing that's sort of like, I know how these for-profit university scams run, essentially.
You can make a lot of money doing that.
I mean, people can go look at like, these are Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah. But the getting accredited part, they haven't really, like they say on the website that they're pursuing accreditation and they think that they're going to get it really fast, like much faster than schools are usually accredited. But then they say that they're pursuing it through an accreditation agency that is not recognized by the state of Texas. Like, it just doesn't seem like this was ready to come out of the oven yet.
Well, that's what I'm curious about. Like, I wonder if Barry Weiss was sort of jumping the gun here and, wanted like, I have nothing to write this week.
I'll just give it 1,300 words on education from Pano Canelos. Maybe my readers would like that.
Exactly. I don't know. I find the whole thing bizarre, but it's interesting. And this is a little bit unrelated, but in some ways there definitely seems to be like a thing happening here that there was just a press release the other day about Colin. Have you heard of this? It is a social
That's the
podcast
network.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is the Glenn Greenwald is the headliner.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Taibbi, Brianna Joy Gray, Antonio Garcia Martinez, and Andre Demise. It is sort of like,
sorry,
what is it?
Colin.
And it's sort of like a Clubhouse competitor, but with some other features. And they're, Greenwald's the top one, and then Taibbi, Brianna Joy Gray. I just named, and there's others. Katie Boyle, Michael Eckhart, Troy Burks, Alex Anstead, Michael Quatwaramani, Brian Hobart, Jerry Lee, Melissa Tomac, Noor Siddiqui, Misty Maris. I don't know.
They're just going to get together and like chop it up with each other, like talk about
Democrats. I think they're their own podcast platform there, but there might be other type of aspect to it. But it is all venture capital money, and it's
another Teal adjacent guy. It's David Sachs is the money behind it, right?
Yes, and like I wonder how much of this is. It's obviously people want to make a profit here on these things, but there does seem to be a real exertion of political. Of ideological entrepreneurship happening within that sort of libertarian. It's like a third front on the culture war on some level.
Yeah, because I think it's like similar to what the Koch brothers did for generations, but they were much they're stodgier. Like that's like kind of, it's a different approach. It's like this Midwestern. And not like the ambitions were any less grand, or that, it hasn't succeeded, because it has. That they basically took these sort of dumb and obscure ideas about how the world works, like not just libertarianism as like an economic understanding of things, but as sort of like as a politics in itself. And they made it respectable. They they endowed chairs at the schools that you want to be associated with. They built institutes, they built buildings to put the teachers in. And then like over the course of a couple of generations, people start seeing it as respectable. Whereas instead it was like, a couple of guys at the University of Chicago, and then just like people you would not make eye contact as you walk by on the street, like waving a pamphlet at you.
Yep.
And in this case, like, I think that it's weird to be sort of present at the creation for a similar type of thing, because I don't think that this is really any less ambitious. And I don't think that the ideology is really all that different. I think that what is sort of always like the part that trips you up with libertarians, for me anyway, is that like, I'm 25% of the way there with them a lot of the time, that like a lot of it is about, like, I'm fine. I want people to be able to be free to do what they want to do.
Right.
It's just a question of like, there's always a point where you hit the ceiling with them in terms of like what they're actually willing to be open to and what they're willing to sort of permit. And for the Kochs, it's always like, they're libertarian only insofar. I mean, it starts with not wanting to pay taxes. And then from there, there's like a whole other thing that grows up out of that. I think with the University of Austin shit, especially because so much of it is about gender and involves like, so many of the names that are on that list are people that are like, I'm not, they're TERFs. They're just like people that have made being anti-trans in kind of a provocative and trollish way a big part of their identity and their professional lives. That is like, you can see the ceiling right there, that they're like, it's fine to be gay, like, and that's okay with us. Like, so that's a step ahead of where like, whatever the Kochs used to be. But like, then this is the upper boundary of what we're actually willing to tolerate. And so above that, it's like the idea that the school keeps talking about the pursuit of truth and all that, beyond the fact that I don't really think that that's a very meaningful statement for a college to make. I think that like, you can see the type of truths that these guys are interested in are not ennobling human truths. They're like, are minorities inherently more criminal than white people? Are trans people real? That's like what they mean by truth. And the idea there of like, it's not about an understanding. It's as with all this libertarian stuff, it's a process of working backwards from a conclusion and then creating an ideology that supports it.
Every time we have a conversation about stuff like this, I cite that Corey Robin book, The Reactionary Mind, because he describes it as, not this particularly, although he probably would, is, the idea that we're going to repackage all of, or the vast majority of the sort of structural, hierarchical dynamics that have been plaguing us forever, but we're going to repackage it in a way that's going to make it seem like it's daring and new. Right. It's like, 15 years ago, it was the free market Fonzie that we would talk about. That guy who was the Reason editor. And it's really the same sort of like dynamic. And that's why it's a slightly different variant of a culture war that they're fighting.
Yeah.
That ostensibly is dressed up in a lot of different ways. And it is, I think you're right. It is fascinating to sort of like watch the development of this, and people, hopefully there'll be a lot more written about like, who these VC people are and what other endeavors they're engaged in, and just how broad Peter Thiel's tail, or how long Peter Thiel's tail is, I guess.
Yeah. I think that the thing that and again, like, this has been a rough few years for like causality as a thing, just as a concept, like understanding that like, if one thing happens, then something else happens. Like, I don't know that I believe that as much as I did, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, it's frustrating and it makes you feel like you're losing your mind all the time. But it can also be funny if you're in a situation like this, where it's like, these are not terribly appealing people. These are not terribly appealing ideas. Like, they can be appealing in, a sort of a surface level, but the reason they keep having to fucking reskin the brand is that sooner or later, like, it's hard to keep this cool. It's hard to make like intolerance and like cutting the highest tax bracket or whatever. Like, you can sell that to some people, to people who are intolerant and already rich. Like, it's easy enough to do that. But at some point, it's like, it's hard to convince somebody that's on the wrong side of the way that power works that they actually, either that they deserve to be there, or that you've like, you can keep selling them, the one weird trick that gets you onto the right side of the continuum. But I don't think that the actual solutions on offer here don't work.
It's also fascinating to me how like I mean, just in reference to the call-in thing, there will always be a new crop of money, and it'll come from different flavors and different sources for leftist voices that will only criticize the left, and then once they run out of their usefulness or it's not as helpful, there will be a new iteration of it. But it just depends. I mean, on this will maybe last for a year and then go away. That there will always be an appetite for that, but you can only suck that bone dry for so long before it's completely dry, I guess.
Like the subsidy is endless, but the ideology is really time limited and capped.
And the voices only have credibility for so long in that area. I mean,
I think that's the part of it
almost done with his
and ultimately, what's interesting to me about this is these contrary. This is the play is let's bring in some contrarians. I mean, in both instances that we're talking about, and the way that these contrarians work, and the reason why they're brought in is also because they've established their own brands. And the fascinating thing about this is that they also are not going to sacrifice their own brands and their own enterprises for this thing. Like, there's no way that Glenn Greenwald has enough equity in this that at the end of the day, he is going to, or any of these people are going to, sacrifice what they need to sacrifice to bring people there. Right. Like, we just did it. We just ended a second show that we did on Peacock, or we just had a show on Peacock where they would play the Majority Report on Peacock. And, at one point I think they were hoping that people who watch us on YouTube would migrate over there. And I'm like, why would I encourage that? You're already, why?
Yeah, I'm in business for myself. I think that's the thing with all the Substack types too, that like, especially like Barry Weiss, I'm not a huge fan of her writing. I think her major professionals. Yeah, sorry. I just mean sentence by sentence. I think.
How dare you?
Embarrassingly. Yeah, I know. And this is the sort of bold truth that I'm willing to come on your show. And I know that no one else that you'd have on would dare say it.
Okay, yeah, jealous. That's fine. Professional jealousy.
The part of it that's amazing to me is that she's leveraged her skill, which I think is like being somebody that like rich, mean dad types think would be cool to have as their daughter. That like that's basically like what she does well. That Substack is like she's making like the sort of money that like the guy that pitched the 7th inning for the Mets this year made. And she's making it just off her fucking posts.
Yep.
Like I don't think that's good, but it's hard to like say that she's going to throw away Aaron Loop money to go to Austin to teach a Zoom class to a bunch of unbearable kids.
Exactly. Like, I mean, that's my point is I think like a lot of this is going to sort of like these endeavors ultimately collapse on their own weight, like, how do you promote your call-in and your Substack in the relentless way that you need to, and you of course are going to just like, you're going to promote the one that puts, $1 of every dollar in your pocket instead of, 3 cents of every dollar in your pocket.
There is kind of like an inspiring network of all these people like putting each other on and boosting each other up or whatever. I mean, if the ideas weren't so bad, it would be very nice.
You're absolutely, this is something that I've watched on the right for years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on the heart, like you just watch that circle jerk with the, Shapiro and Rubin and, all those other people, and they just get around and this is developed in this space. I mean, I hesitate to,
but yeah.
And the left could take some pointers here, but unfortunately, like when there's a lot of money involved on the right or with the IDW, it makes it a lot easier to be more collaborative, where in left media spaces, there's less money.
Yes.
We could do it.
I think
we
that's
could do
true.
it.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, Sam, I just think the other thing I'd add to that is that they only say the same 3 things about the same 3 issues all the time. And so I think that there is, for all the idea of this being like sort of bold, heterodox thinking or whatever, like they're just like praising each other for rephrasing each other's posts. And so that makes it easier, I think, in some ways, and they're only linking to each other and all of that. And I think that, like, again, echo chambers exist across the political spectrum. I just think it's easier when everybody says the same things all the time, which I think is like, for all the failings of the discourse on our side of the continuum, like I think is less so. I think that there's more, it's less lockstep. And also like people are responding to actual things in the news as opposed to like in this case, like where it is really all about like the West, gender and race. And it's the same things about that.
And really just like one half of the equation.
Yes.
Right? Like where there is some disruption in essentially the status quo that has existed for ad infinitum.
Yeah.
David, much appreciated. People can find your Substack where?
It is at Truth Warrior. I'm guesting on Barry's thing this week about how I think that the Eternals is Marxist.
Let me just say, if there's a way for us to do an online poll where we get to make you athletic director or professor or dean, you let us know, because we will push that poll big time.
I would really love to, just run a 5-out, just play fun basketball at the University of Boston with all the guys that didn't fit in at Stanford because they were too weird.
That's right. There you go.
Thanks for having me, guys.
The host of the Distraction podcast, and folks check out he's also the co-owner of Defector Media. David Roth, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank
you. I forgot to tell him the joke about how when we promoted his appearance on here, not unlike the University of Austin, I accidentally said David Lee Roth was going to come on. Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.report.com. Also, don't forget our live show, January 16th, Majority Live. You can also become, join our Discord at Majority Discord. And you can IM the show in the fun half coming up in just a second by going to majorityapp.com. Take a quick, Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, I'm very excited to plug our Left Reckoning Patreon-only show this weekend, which is going to star one Kowalski from Nebraska. Yeah, Aaron Kowalski talking with David and I about farming, agriculture, what's the future of farming, what's the future of small towns, all sorts of different things. We had a really fun conversation yesterday because he was letting his field dry off, so he couldn't work, so he decided to do some broadcasting with Left Reckoning. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning if you want to get that conversation this weekend.
All right. I'm going to take a quick break, head into the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We're back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. You can IM the show at by getting our app at majority.app.com. Let's go into the IMs. Dayglow Lefty. Hey, Sam, can I get a shofar for my son who was born last night? By the way, I've been in the Navy 12 years. One thing we are afforded is 14 days of paternity leave. It's not much, but I can guarantee you all of us utilize it. Joe Rogan can get effed. This is for your son. Congratulations, Dago Lefty. Oy. Brooklyn Sioux, NYPD shot and killed a 65-year-old man on the Belt Parkway here in Brooklyn yesterday. Hard to find details because local news is covering it as a traffic story, as in such a huge rush hour inconvenience. Jeez. Antisocial. My right-wing dad has many health issues, among them being heart, kidney, and diabetes. He's avoided routine checkups for most of these since spring 2020 due to fear of getting COVID and is now dealing with the consequences. He's refusing the vaccine because he thinks it's the mark of the beast. Bill Gates microchip and has definitely fallen victim to misinformation on Facebook. On top of this, he's facing job loss, that loss of health benefits next month if he doesn't get vaccinated. Can you recommend any tips, talking points to convince him the vaccine is legitimate and life-saving?
We get a lot of these, and it's difficult to say, especially if you've already been trying to communicate this with him.
I mean, I think he's just got to make. I don't know. I mean, I think you got to just make a cost benefit analysis. Like, you know, there have been billions of shots administered at this point. And I don't know, does your dad, whatever he thinks is going to happen by the mark of the beast or the microchip, it's going to affect everyone around him because they've theoretically gotten vaccinated. Does he want to be in his late 60s with a failing kidney and, you know, failing other things and look around and all of everyone he knows has been taken by the beast? I mean, like, I don't understand, like, the scenario. Like, I get the idea of, like, in 25 years, you know, the 5-year-olds who get the shot are going to, you know, maybe develop hypertension or something like this. Like, I can understand, like, sort of like perceiving something like that. But if you're 65 years old, like, I don't know exactly what you think the timeline for the mark of the beast to actually, I don't even, what happens if you're marked with the beast? Do we know?
You go to hell.
Well, so everybody else is. So just join all of us. That's what
I'm saying.
But mark of the beast is biblical. So this is like, I don't know the IMers background religiously, but this sounds like some sort of, if you get this vaccine, you're being injected with the satanic marker, and thus you're going to hell. And so he doesn't want to go to hell.
Yeah, I don't know. Between the 101 and the 5, I don't know. I won't read those. 10 long gnomes. My big takeaway from the Rittenhouse trial is that we either need more cameras in courtrooms like the Supreme Court or less, because lawyers and judges shouldn't be celebrities. That's how you get more families like the Kardashians. Yeah, like I said, let's play this clip. Like I say, I don't follow these type of cases, criminal cases, once they go to trial. I didn't do it with the OJ trial. I didn't do it with the Zimmerman trial. That process works. I'm not there. I'm not on the jury. And so, but I will say I have never seen, and maybe it is because of TV, a judge, and I think judges are all incredibly ideological and political in the context of of other, type of courts, civil courts. But for a criminal judge to be this, this sort of like, here, listen to the, well, first off, we also know about this judge. Do we have the clip of the Lee Greenwood song playing?
We played that yesterday.
Oh, you did? Okay. So you've heard the clip of the Lee Greenwood song. And then listen to this. Like, what do you think he's saying here when they're talking about breaking for lunch and about getting Asian food, whatever that is?
What's that you want to say?
Let's hope for 1 o'clock. I don't know. Hope the Asian food isn't coming. Isn't on one of those boats in Long Beach Harbor. But let's.
What is going on? Like, okay, he's making some type of joke, but let's just assess like what goes into, a joke is just sort of like something that's on your mind. You think that everybody in the room is going to connect with this. It's something that is out there. Aside from the idea that like Asian food, to the extent that you get Asian food in the United States, is made by Americans and is made in America. Like, I mean,
I don't know what reality you're living in. When I order Kung Pao chicken, I have it imported directly on one of those cargo ships, and that's why it's held up at Long Beach.
But when you get, but like I wouldn't ever, let's put it this way. Let's make it a little bit easier. Like if I was to order some German food, is my thinking about that German food that these are like foreigners? They're like there's something foreign going on here. Like that's not the first thing that I think about. I just think it's like there's a German couple that came to the United States or is a German heritage and they're making German food. Like I don't immediately think foreign-y when I order that food.
I don't think so either.
And then tying it into the ports in Long Beach. Like I wonder, it strikes me as a guy who's just sort of like using his platform to push stuff that is like pretty political in the news. And I don't know how that implicates the case in any way. But quite a judge they've got there.
His moment to shine, right? It's what was the name of the judge in the OJ trial? No.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but he basically elongated the trial, right, in order to maintain his spotlight, and that's kind of what this guy's auditioning for. Right-wing curry favors, Lance Ito, right? I would guess that he wants to be some sort of personality, the way he leans back. And Vic Berger had this edit of him leaning back in that ridiculous throne-like chair that he's in. He's relishing every moment of it. And there's a reason that the prosecution did not want him involved. They were, Will Bunch, I think he writes for the Philly Inquirer, had a long thread about the problematic decisions this judge has made since the 80s.
Wow. I mean, I can't criticize someone for wanting to be, in the spotlight and appreciating attention. I mean,
you can criticize when you're a judge, but he's never had a trial of this magnitude come to him and nationally televised. So he's trying to have some one-liners, and he's liking the right-wing attention.
Yeah, I think it is. I think I've never seen somebody. It's one thing to be sort of enjoying and lapping up the spotlight. It's another to be sort of like promoting this type of stuff in this sensitive of a trial, right? I mean, this is not like a random, let's put it this way. This is not a random, murder trial. This is one that is inherently political and been politicized. The incident was at a political event, if you will. And so for this guy to be sort of like lacking this type of circumspect, I'm pretty shocked, but we'll see what the jury has to say about it in the final analysis. All right. Speaking of final analysis, people remember the other day that we played a clip of the video produced by the YouTuber named Sean, Shaun, and he did a 60-minute video. Maybe it was 50-minute. I don't know. It was a long video of of a series of misinformation that Jimmy Dore had basically put. Oh, that was Siri. That was Siri. A series of misinformation that Jimmy Dore had been giving on the vaccines, and we highlighted one moment of it where, and it was just one moment. Let's be clear, where it showed not only was Jimmy just like dishing out misinformation, but was actually producing misinformation by promoting a graphic that purported to be written by Fortune magazine, that in fact was a highly edited paragraph that totally distorted the essence and the spirit and the letter of the Fortune piece. And apparently Jimmy Dore got very nervous about getting demonetized on YouTube because you're not allowed to spread vaccine disinformation there. And I imagine some of his YouTube reps said, hey, man, you got to fix this. And he only, I don't know if he fixed all of it, but he came out and he fixed this. And this is hilarious because he's both admitting to never actually reading anything and also blaming his producer, who is just some rando.
Well, is he or she a rando? Or
I don't know. Let's listen to the Jimmy Dore video here.
Right. Yeah.
When we originally reported this graphic here is incorrect. This graphic here was put together by my producer, and he joined together two sentences that didn't go together, and he added a word, despite. So if you're going to add a word, you have to put brackets around it so people know you've added a word and it wasn't in the source text. He didn't do that. And then he changed the tense of these two words to make it fit syntactically or grammatically with the rest of the sentence. Now, you could combine two sentences, but you have to put a ... and then so people know that you're jumping ahead. And so, but that didn't do that. Plus, that was supposed to be a period, and he put a comma. And then he put this, and it actually changed the meaning of this sentence. It didn't mean what. So, by the way, doesn't change. So I have to cover that, right? Because that was fucked up.
Pause it. Now there he almost says it doesn't change the meaning of the fortune piece. But remember now, Jimmy's got to be careful because he's not doing this because he wants to correct the record because he has so much integrity. And he prides himself on not delivering misinformation. He's doing this because he's afraid of getting demonetized. So he can't say it doesn't change the meaning of it because it did fundamentally change the meaning of that story. You can go back and look at the Sean video or even our coverage of it. So go back and keep going. I just want people to just watch with this in mind. He is walking a tightrope here.
That didn't do that. Plus, that was supposed to be a period, and he put a comma. And then he put this, and it actually changed the meaning of this sentence. It didn't mean what. So, by the way, doesn't change. So I have to cover that, right? Because that was fucked up. And I didn't know about that. I had to trust my producer that we went over the story. He put it together. I had no idea he was going to take two sentences, jam them together, and add a word without putting it in a bracket. So I had no idea when I did this segment originally that had happened. That was done by my producer who put it together. I asked him why he did it, and he didn't really have a good excuse. He said, I was in a hurry, I got sloppy, and I'm stupid. Unfortunately, he can't be with us anymore because I can't have someone on like that who's sloppy, stupid, and does something like that. So unfortunately, he's no longer with us. So someone
he can't because there's only room for one sloppy, stupid, incompetent person at this show, and it's got to be him.
I'm the sloppy and stupid one. I'm really sloppy. I mean, you know, Sam, when I mess up or if, like, say I don't get something right or Matt or Bradley, you know, we always come to you and say, I'm sloppy and I'm stupid, right? That's
why I make you. That's what I stand. I put the sign up where it says, say you're sloppy and stupid to me because that's what I want to. All right, keep playing this.
Yeah.
There's other aspects of this. It just also keep going.
Just seems very realistic that's how an employee would talk to their boss, right?
Unfortunately, he can't be with us anymore because I can't have someone on like that who's sloppy, stupid, and does something like that. And so, unfortunately, he's no longer with us. So someone's paid a price for this. But Singapore's growing caseload has raised alarms nonetheless because of the speed at which cases have climbed. And there's a period. And he put a comma, and then he jumps down to here. The policy included... and then he tried, then he said, despite policies, including stay at home, that is not accurate. And then he didn't put the brackets. And then, so that was wrong. And that was effed up. And the reason why we're correcting that is because it was brought to my attention. And I figured out that actually happened. And I'm correcting it because we have integrity at the show. That's all we have is our word.
Okay. First off, you notice, like, even when he's showing what it actually said in the first place, he's cutting off the paragraph before that contextualizes how much this wasn't just sloppiness. This was a change in the meaning of the story, not just as written, but in reality. Okay, which was numbers have gone up, but relative to where they were before, because before we were in total lockdown. And now we're not in total lockdown. We're vaccinated, but we're not in total lockdown. There has been such a radical change in behavior of our individuals in society that there's going to be an uptick in infections, even though the vaccines diminish the communicability of this virus. And then he pretends that someone called it to his attention, as opposed to the video that Sean put out that got over 300,000 views.
And counting.
I think
it's closer to 500,000 at this point.
The guy lies multiple times in his video about how he lied the first time. And now there's this, like, producer. Let's just, like, before we get to the idea of whether this producer actually exists, and I want to make it clear, and I'm going to make this offer throughout our conversation. If you are that producer, we'll interview you. Very curious to see your perspective on this.
Yeah.
Very curious.
Because, I mean, Jimmy, in his video about you, working man supporter Jimmy, called you sloppy and stupid. We can't have someone sloppy and stupid. Not that you made a mistake, not that you know,
we're giving him what he clearly wanted.
We're giving him what he wanted. Not any of that. Not that you were doing exactly what he wanted for, you know, working backwards from the premise of his video, which was anti-vax material that can still slip under the YouTube algorithm. No, you individually are sloppy and stupid. Very progressive of him and gracious to, after firing somebody and taking away their income, which I thought that's why he was against these vaccine mandates, right? Because
somebody's got to pay the price.
You don't want people losing I don't want people losing their fucking jobs over vaccine mandates, right? You just let somebody go for a simple mistake and then disparage them sloppy and stupid. This very real human being. Please, good sir, he said in this, come forward if you do exist and let us know, because that is not within the values that Jimmy Dore purports about treating people and employees with respect and keeping them employed despite maybe their opposition to vaccines or other mistakes.
You could, the alternate version that you've laid out here is where Jimmy says, we messed up. The buck stops with me on this program. If I'm going to say words, I make sure that they're true. And any mistakes that were made by my producers is on me, and I accept the responsibility for that, and not fired the guy.
Yeah.
But let's just walk through this for a moment. I've read a story in Fortune magazine. I've read it. I've assessed what it means. I've said, Matt, give me a graphic. Give me a graphic from the story. Do a tear sheet from this story. Now, when we do tear sheets, we literally just do a tear sheet,
screenshot,
right? Which is, we just do a screenshot of the actual thing, or we scroll through the video. But let's pretend that we didn't do that, that I wanted you to formulate a paragraph that is the essence of this story. Do we not want, like, how does that work? So Matt, give me a graphic that says the essence of the story. And then what do you say to me?
Can I just screenshot this paragraph here, or?
No. I want you to write up a graphic that summarizes the story.
So you want me to compose copy based on the original stuff? Can I just cut and paste it?
No, just write it up in some way. And then I will read it on air. But I won't read it before then. And even when I read it on air, I won't notice that it is completely distorting the essence of the story. That's Jimmy's defense. And then I say, oh, you got to go because you're sloppy at summarizing.
Stupid.
Right. So you just come to me and you say, like, Matt, why did you do this? Why did you add this word and completely change the nature of the story?
Well, he probably just didn't read it before, if that was the case, right? I mean, you know.
What kind of dolt?
Yeah. Well, that's
who watches this show. Like, I understand if you're anti-vax, you're okay with this. Because at the end of the day, you know, you're going to read into the essence of all of this anyways. You're just going to say Fortune magazine is covering anyways, so it would be inaccurate. You don't care. But if you're not anti-vax, what kind of dolt actually watches that and believes that Jimmy is telling? And frankly, like, how is YouTube going to pretend that this guy's not putting out anti-vax stuff? I mean, honestly, give me a break. But let's put up a tweet about the actual Fortune article. Go ahead. This is apparently the writer of the.
Yeah. Sorry, Matt. Sam.
I wrote an article. Wait, Matt. Will you summarize this? Yeah,
this is the author of the original Fortune piece who is commenting on this now.
I wrote an article about Singapore's recent outbreak that was misquoted and rearranged in a vaccine skeptics video broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people on YouTube. The video's host, Jimmy Dore, says he didn't actually read the article before posting the video.
This is a thread. You can go down. Yeah. Here's the actual article, he says.
Dore's show combined two entirely different sentences in the article to insinuate that COVID spread despite COVID's zero high vaccine rates. In reality, the article says SG's numbers started to rise after transitioning from zero COVID to living with the virus. Zero COVID is the total lockdown.
Yes.
So living with the virus, which is what he talks about all the time, basically we just need to start doing this because you're going to get COVID anyway. You're just going to get it. We just need to just stop caring. Actually led to the problems in this article that he fabricated a summary over. Interesting.
Yesterday, Dorr acknowledged the error and said he fired a producer for misquoting my article, but he also said the mistake didn't change the thrust of his argument and has not taken down the original video. I mean,
integrity is all we have.
It's all we have. The video's still doing numbers. Still doing numbers.
So now let's get into whether or not this producer's real.
I mean, it's possible. It's possible that the producer is real. I mean,
it makes him look better though that he fired somebody else beneath him for that mistake. It's I don't know how people.
And it's either that, right? It's either which is what I think is true, which is that it's mostly his wife and him that work on it. She is identified as the producer on the show. Okay, so either they deliberately changed this article for misinformation, they're keeping it up. So they can't be that embarrassed if they're keeping it up, or which is the less likely scenario, this producer did change it without Jimmy's direction and he fired someone under him and he didn't read or do any work before putting something on air. Neither of those situations make him look particularly good.
Nope. That's, I mean, there's really not much else to say.
Well, I'm a betting woman. You know this, right? I like sometimes doing a little bit of gambling. I would bet a lot of money that this producer's not real.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
Maybe we should hear from the producer.
And then, maybe that would be my form of betting. I'll take you out to dinner, producer. If you, that'll be me putting my money where my mouth is on this bet. If you do come forward with this, fly out, make sure you're all cozy, and I'll take it.
We all know the story of Patrick, who around here, on this show, did a bad job in talking to Gavin McGinnis, and Patrick has since been fired multiple times. Actually, Patrick's actually been fired more times than he was even hired on this program. That's how seriously I take these infractions. So
again, no commissary privileges for Patrick.
Patrick, yeah, of course not. That's the first thing to go. First thing to go. What should we do here? You want to do the Elaine Chao thing? This is pretty impressive.
We can do Chao, yeah.
What's the other one?
We have a Ben Shapiro on IQ.
Oh yeah, okay. Let's do Shapiro first, and then we'll do Elaine Chao.
Didn't we talk about Elaine Chao yesterday?
We
did. We put it on for Sam because we want one. But
okay. We don't need to do it again. But here's Ben Shapiro. I wonder if he really understands what he's saying here. The world in which we would live in, where this is completely consistent with right-wing talking points, that there is something morally reprehensible about, or you often hear morally reprehensible about people who are living in poverty. In this instance, Shapiro is just simply saying there's a genetic predetermination as to whether you will live in poverty. Here is Ben Shapiro.
So the California guidelines could overhaul the way many school districts approach math instruction. The draft rejected the idea of naturally gifted children, recommended against shifting certain students into accelerated courses in middle school, and tried to promote high-level math courses that could serve as alternatives to calculus, like data science or statistics. Okay, so first of all, if you reject the idea of naturally gifted children, it's because you're an idiot. Some kids are gifted, period, end of story. Some kids have higher IQs than others. And shock of shocks, it turns out that there is a heavy, heavy genetic component to that. That if both parents are neuroscientists, there's a good shot that their kid is going to have a higher IQ than somebody, both of whose parents are on welfare. Okay, that is just the... I'm not saying that's inevitably true. There are many smart people who are on welfare, I'm sure.
Pause it 1 second. I love the dichotomy between neuroscientists and people who are on welfare.
Yeah.
Right? Like those are two different types of categories of people. scientists or poor people. That's what it works out for Ben there. Also, let's keep in mind what the gifted and talented program is. We used to have one in New York. I think they're getting, hopefully they're getting rid of it. And I believe I don't know if they did already or didn't.
Jersey, we had it in New Jersey. It was like, yeah.
There are without a doubt gifted students who, you could have like a violin prodigy or a math prodigy or a science prodigy or I don't know, other types of prodigies, I guess. But the numbers that we're talking about, they're not all gifted and talented. They're all within a range of being, smarter or not smarter than other kids in certain situations. But they all are, and you see this dynamic, at least in New York City, it was very clear, that you have wealthier kids, broadly speaking, wealthier kids living in areas where the schools may not be as good. We know there's reams and reams of data about how your performance in school is a function of your income, of your family's income. I mean, are there exceptions to this? I'm absolutely sure. But every educator I've ever spoken to on this program could basically say, you tell me what the median income is in that area code or that zip code, and I'll tell you the quality of the schools as measured by their test-taking abilities. And incidentally, that's how you get into the gifted and talented. You take a test.
I was in that. I was in it, and it was not. I was not at like a school that was underfunded. It was like a highly taxed school or whatever, and where I grew up in New Jersey. And I mean, it was exactly that dynamic.
And it is, and so it's just bizarre. But it's also even bizarre, even on his own terms, that he's comparing a scientist with someone on welfare.
Yeah, I mean. You know that Ben Carson made use of food stamps growing up, so there's the one person that crosses that divide.
Oh well, he wrote
one person.
Or he was saying he would say on average, Ben Carson rose to the top. But like, I mean, he's also just one step away from race science there too, right?
Right, it is, but it's also just like this is what Charles Murray did after the bell curve, which is like you move on to the class stratification is because of inbuilt genetic and cultural.
You naturalize the class stratification and poverty.
And that's why these folks are always like moths to a flame with IQ, because that's the best function it serves is to naturalize discrepancies.
Even though there have been countless studies, I mean, IQ is based on science and data, right? But so are the studies that disprove how IQ is actually indicative of intelligence. Well, that's also based on science and data and show how it's super racialized.
We'll have a Stephen Gould quote on that coming up.
Yeah, let's play the rest of the Ben Shapiro.
Parents are neuroscientists. There's a good shot that their kid is going to have a higher IQ than somebody, both of whose parents are on welfare. Okay, that is just I'm not saying that's inevitably true. There are many smart people who are on welfare, I'm sure. They're not all that many stupid neuroscientists, but there are, I'm sure, smart people on welfare. But if you have to take the average person, and all you know about them is child of two neuroscientists versus child of two people on welfare in a free American society, and all you have to go on is that, whose kid do you think is going to have the higher IQ? Okay, so to pretend that doesn't exist in real life is stupid. It's just dumb. It's like saying that two tall parents are not likely to have a height-gifted child. I mean, how could we possibly say that some people are more height-gifted than others? To pretend that intelligence isn't inborn at all, and we are all sort of tabula rasa, is silly. It's just not true by any available metric. Okay, but this is what California wanted to teach.
Pause it. Okay. First off, I love the fact that he's obsessed about someone is gifted with height because he was ungifted. Yeah. But notice what he's doing here. He's doing exactly what Emma said in terms of like naturalizing, and he's not even naturalizing intelligence as much as he is like naturalizing economic status, right? Yep. And as if this tracks, 1-to-1 in this country. He's making two arguments at once. One is that intelligence is exclusively a function of genetics, which is absurd. And he's also arguing that success in a field or making money is also a function of genetics.
Yep.
And once you do that, you've basically said society is exactly as it should be.
Yep.
Continue.
That's exactly it. What? Go ahead, Matt.
Continue.
Oh.
They recommended against shifting students into accelerated courses because they want to punish skill sets. They want to defeat the skillsocracy. The last thing you want to do is reward people who are gifted, who, by the way, should use their gifts on behalf of society in a free market society. Free markets allow people to distribute the uses of their gifts widely. This is the magic of free markets.
Also, so he's like a facts over feelings guy, right? He compares intelligence to height. Height is a quantifiable metric. Somebody's 6'5", somebody's 5'5", and in this case, that somebody is Ben Shapiro most likely. But like with intelligence, there are a variety of metrics that you can view intelligence on. And I don't agree with pretty much any of them because I think it's entirely embedded in class, and smartness is usually just a way for, or intelligence is usually just a way for people in that strata to make themselves feel like greater than they are or whatever, and it keeps class in place. But you can't quantify it. So I thought he was the facts over feelings guy. Essentially, he's trying to say if you succeed in society, that is the direct measure of intelligence. But that's connecting a few things, facts over feelings guy. That's not an actual metric directed to intelligence.
Well, yeah. I mean, the obvious thought experiment is to switch the child in the poor neighborhood with the rich parents and see whose brain develops better if they're, not missing meals and stuff like that. But we have this great clip from Stephen Jay Gould from 1981. And this is a book I would recommend to anybody with interest in this stuff and the way science can be used for racism. His book, The Mismeasurement of Man. But he's interviewed here in 1981, and I think he lays it out in about a couple minutes, everything you need to say, and nothing has really updated since then.
Why do you think American society is so obsessed with IQ?
I don't know that we're obsessed by it, but I think it arises largely in the context of the lamentable history of our racism. I don't know that it's as much an issue in more homogeneous societies, but we have a situation based on the legacy of racism and continued oppression of people of African descent in this country that has led, for social reasons, to poor average performance of blacks on these tests. That doesn't tell you why it happens, but in a basically racist climate in a country with a strong racist history, I suppose it's not surprising that particularly conservative social thinkers would try to relate poor performance of blacks to intrinsic biological limits. So, as I like to put it, the quick critique of the bell curve is that it's based upon 4 assumptions, all of which have to be true. If any one of them is false, the whole argument collapses. First, there has to be a meaningful single number that can be given to intelligence. I think that's false. Secondly, you have to be able to rank people in a single linear order upon it, and that order has to then correlate with social attributes, whether you go to prison or not, whether you have children out of wedlock, etc., your income. Thirdly, that number has to be highly heritable. And fourthly, it has to be unchangeable, or effectively unchangeable. A lot of people confuse the third and the fourth. They assume that if something's heritable, it means it's unchangeable, but that's false. Suppose the first 3 were true, and they're not. I mean, suppose there was a legitimate number and you could rank people and it was highly hereditary. It still could be very mutable. For example, the obvious example is I may have an inherited defective vision, which is 100% inherited, and I go to the drugstore and I buy a pair of eyeglasses and my vision is fine. I mean, it could be, all those things could be true about intelligence, but the equivalent of buying a pair of eyeglasses, namely programs of remedial education, might boost IQ, and then the whole argument would collapse.
Yeah, that's great. I love that clip, both because it's so clear and such an indictment of this type of essentialism, and also how messy his desk is.
Yeah,
because that really justifies my mess.
Directly quantify if somebody has so many papers on their desk that they are in the intelligent bracket.
How can you trust this man? He's got a dirty desk.
Yeah, well, I mean, My methodology is different. Dirtier desk means smarter. I mean, I'm unintentionally giving Sam a compliment here. Cleaner desk means you don't have that many papers, so you can't be that smart. Also, I think like Shapiro, if he's the facts and science guy, right, he should understand the concept of variables, but or causation versus correlation. But that doesn't seem to enter his brain when talking about these topics.
Really, the varnish came off a little bit on Shapiro on that one.
Yeah, well, you knew when CRT took down the governor in Virginia that these guys were going to start getting back into the old Charles Murray stuff. Dust that copy off. Let's see if we can see what kind of mileage we can get out of this now.
We're running with this. They are running with it. This is interesting. I personally, let's play this clip of Youngkin. This is the governor-elect of Virginia. Apparently, his 17-year-old boy went up and attempted to vote for his father. Now he's 17, not registered, but here he is.
There were reports of your son trying to vote in this election. Can you explain what happened there?
Yeah, it was just it was silliness. I think there's real confusion on where a 17-year-old can vote or not, and so he had a friend who suggested that he might be able to vote. He went up and asked. I know my son really well. He's an incredibly respectful young man, and he presented his ID. And when they said he couldn't vote, he said okay, and he went to school. So. I am a little bit frustrated that it's become, the media paid so much attention to it. It's my 17-year-old son, and I really would like everybody to leave my family alone.
Now, I'm sympathetic to that idea that, maybe a 17-year-old could be confused about what the legal voting age is. That I find that surprising. His dad's a politician, just got elected to governor. One would think that, voting eligibility would have come up at one point in the dinner table. I mean, I wonder if my 16-year-old, I ask her if she knows what the voting age is. And I could even appreciate the idea that like a 17-year-old's like, I want to vote for my dad. Like, I want to try and vote for my dad just because I want to be able to say I vote for my dad for governor. The thing that Youngkin does not mention, which I think, raises, some other questions, that apparently he tried to do that again. Like after the kid was told, no, you can't vote, he didn't really take that to heart. He went and tried to vote again. And here, put up this graphic. Maybe people remember this story. Do we have that, Matt?
Come
up. This woman, Crystal Mason, had been sentenced to 5 years in prison. Excuse me. No, she was convicted of voting illegally. She didn't know that she was ineligible. I don't know if that was because she had what it was that made her ineligible to vote. But she voted. They allowed her to vote. And apparently she was on probation for a felony conviction related to tax fraud.
He was trying to vote for Bernie Sanders, incidentally.
And Texas prohibits felons from voting until they finish their sentence entirely. She didn't realize that while still on probation, she was still, I guess, being, under her sentence. She voted in the last presidential election. They cast a provisional ballot because poll workers couldn't find her name on the voter registration rolls. The ballot was never counted because she's not an eligible voter, it turns out. And she was sentenced to a 5-year prison sentence. I mean,
awful.
That's really the horror of this. Is, look, this 17-year-old, it's not, one 17-year-old is not going to implicate the voting one way or another. But the idea that Youngkin, well, he was never going to do this, take the opportunity to be like, look, we need to have a little bit more room in our society for something like this that causes no harm.
Somebody wants to vote, they should be able to vote. Like, how simple is that? Both of them should be able to vote, even the 17-year-old kid. If a teenager wants to vote, they should be able to vote.
The idea that we just completely excommunicate people who have done their time from participating in society, which is supposed to be this shining beacon, this participation in democracy, I should say, is voting. And they've done their time, and they should then be able to be a part of America again. And yet there's nobody who really has the political gumption and guts to say, I want felons to be able to vote, but it should be done yesterday.
Frankly, I don't even know if you need to do your time to vote. I mean, you're still a human being living in the country. You still, you know, many of your rights have been stripped from you. But
I agree. I mean, but that's just, I mean, that's what happens when you pursue these tough on crime policies. They're really hard to walk back because politicians just don't. They get scared and freaked out, but it's absolutely the wrong thing to do. And just one other point on this, that was a good example, Glenn Youngkin, of pollsters knowing what to do when somebody who was trying to illegally vote tried to vote. Right. Looks like it kind of worked out.
I wonder if there's a big lie. I wonder how many children does Youngkin have? I mean, if Youngkin's son voted twice, maybe that's indicative of like they're sending buses from Massachusetts or something. Let's do some IMs. We'll get out of here. Weed scientists risk the imagination of a new possibility. Username required. Will the sound system at the Wilbur be available for you, or will you have to bring some kind of karaoke machine? Will Emma need to provide her own? We'll see about that. Not sure. Awaken Joe. MFs these days don't want their kids vaccinated because of autism, but do want them to grow up to be software engineers. Sorry, folks, you can't have both. Riajib. My local airport, Raleigh-Durham, basically broke today. Some heavy rain messed up electronics. People in security lines for 5+ hours. Nuts. Louis, the U.S. opened its border to the EU just as infections are on the rise again, and at the start of the holiday travel season, too. What can go wrong? I mean, I think in this country we're going to see that we're going to see more boosters. I do think it's problematic that we're using these and not sending them to the rest of the country. We should be basically rest of the world rather, but we're going to see apparently boosters. You're like back to like 98% against Delta and whatnot, and against any type of symptomatic COVID. I think we may see infections, rise at this time, but not hospitalizations significantly or deaths, unless it's unvaccinated people. And I think at one point we're very close to basically having to say, like, we've done everything we can do. That's the sense I get from society. I mean, as an individual, I may be, operate in a different way, but as a society. Quinn from Minneapolis, there'll absolutely be a Michael impression of Sam gifting only Majority Report sponsor products to the crew for the holidays. Timothy, when I saw Matt's hair yesterday, my first thought was Bobcat Goldthwait and Police Academy. It's awesome. Keep it going. And Buonara, I guarantee you that Mike Pence, because of his certain warped religious views, actually likes about Donald Trump that his supporters loved him enough that they were willing to martyr Mike Pence.
Yeah. He would be he'd be fine to die for Jesus's messenger, Donald Trump.
Doe Link, Austin is the Silicon Valley of the South. Michael Dell Computers takes up space. Tommy from Yakubia. No, Tom from Yakubia. Does this University of Austin have a 28-story tower with an observation deck? More to the point, is there a freight elevator that can accommodate a good-sized Foot Locker? How much input do people on welfare get into the crafting of IQ tests? The end is slower with Crowder. Wait, did I miss something? Is there more show? Do I have to hear more of Sam's voice? Why hasn't Emma made the extended show on Thursday as a way to usurp Sam from his throne? Binder Dad. On Last Night Doomed, old Matt asked Door's former producer to reach out to him. It's just a race. It's a race to who's going to get the former producer. Joe Snuffy. The increases in the price of gas and milk is a serious issue for American families with fuel-inefficient children. When your child only gets 3 miles to the gallon, okay. You need to stop making jokes about this critical issue and get on board with lowering the minimum wage so we can make milk great again. Jimmy's producer. I want to correct the misinfo that Door is spreading. I didn't say I'm sloppy and stupid, though I am. How do you think I got him to hire me? What I actually said was that I'm a jag-off comedian. All right, 2 more. Train Boy. Bernie was, Chinese food was invented by the Jews. Bernie was for allowing felons and people who are currently in prison to vote. It was weaponized against him in the primary. Indeed. And the final IM of the week. Let's see what do we got here. Sterno. Can somebody tell me where the adjunct professor teaching about neuroscience but can't afford a place to live fits in here? Very good point. Matt, Bradley, Emma, great job today. See you folks on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and